Well, welcome back to another segment of Arizona Mortgage News. Insider Update. We have our resident expert, Mike Goblet of United Mortgage and Financial Group. And Mike, I understand that there's 3 questions that everyone should ask when thinking about renting or buying.
Well, there's probably more than 3, Matt, but I think there are 3 critical questions that need to begin with, and then add the others that pertain specifically to you. But before we begin, the one thing I really want to say is I'm not here to try and convince somebody to buy. I don't think that's my job. It's to help somebody that has decided to buy, but I'm not going to try and convince you that buying is the right time right now, because it may not be for everybody. And then number 2, the important thing to keep in mind, it's not as simple as what is cheaper. It's a lot more complex for everybody to ask or to think about.
That makes sense. It sounds like you need to get out the Ben Franklin and do the reasons to buy, reasons to rent, and weigh your options.
That's exactly what somebody really needs to be doing. Now, in my opinion, the first question you need to ask is, how long do you think you'll be in that place that you're going to move into? I think that becomes very critical. For instance, if you're only going to be there 2 years or less, you know what? In most cases, it's probably more beneficial to rent than to buy. Okay, so but now if you're looking at 3 to 4 years, that's kind of a borderline. There can be advantages or disadvantages to both. And then if you're 5 years or more, you know, now it's about more stability, and that's an important factor to consider. So knowing how long you're planning on being there when you start out becomes a very important first question to ask.
Seems logical.
So the second question is, do you even have the disposable income to be thinking about buying? You know, there are costs to taking a home mortgage that aren't associated with renting. So you need to decide, do you have the disposable income to afford to buy? Now, what's important to think about that is, it isn't just, do you have 20% to put down? You don't need to be putting down 20% anymore to buy a home. And particularly if you're going to be there for a shorter time, it may make more sense to use less of your own cash. You can actually get a mortgage with as little as 3% down. You can get a conventional loan without MI with as little as 5% down. So knowing whether you have the disposable cash and how much you have becomes a very critical second question.
Sounds like a very logical question number 2.
And the third would be, and this is where it really gets a little more complex, what type of lifestyle and comfort are you looking for and want to enjoy on a daily basis? For example, an apartment and a condo do not provide the same type of lifestyle as a home with a patio and different things. So you really need to determine, you know, what are you looking for during that period of time. So there's advantages or disadvantages to both. And then number 2, even if you've decided a home, you can still look at renting a home versus, you know, buying. But we'll get back to that topic because a little bit deeper into this, because it provides a different scenario to consider.
Makes sense. Well, that lifestyle one's a pretty big factor.
Yeah, it is to me. And actually, a little bit later, I was going to say, I just went through this whole process myself. So it really helped me understand exactly the questions that everybody should be asking. So with these questions, let's talk about now the advantages, for instance, of renting. You know, now that you've got the 3 questions, what is the advantage of renting? Well, number 1, it gives you flexibility, mostly in terms of being able to move quickly without a lot of additional costs. Number 2, it costs a lot less initial money to get into a rental agreement than it does a mortgage. Usually it's, you break a lease, it's usually a month or two that it will cost you, depending upon it. So, and it really only costs a month or two to get into it. And then number three, in my opinion, the next big advantage is little to no maintenance costs. You have a landlord whose job it is to maintain the property you're renting. Make sense?
Those are all good factors. Then there's kind of two stages. There's the people that are kind of getting into a home, and then there's the people that are in a home that their lifestyle's changing, and they may want to go back to more of the easier living, where everything's included. And then, is there a time frame when you're kind of at the golden years, or it makes more sense to rent than own?
Well, again, it really gets down to an individual basis. And like I said, I just went through it. I was moving out and not exactly sure where I wanted to live. And when I first started looking, I wanted to rent because I wanted the flexibility. I liked a lot of the hassle-free. And that's where I started out. But candidly, there were reasons that drove me to, I ended up buying. So,
makes sense.
And some of that gets into the disadvantages. What are the disadvantages of renting? Well, number one, you better plan on your rent going up virtually every year for X number of years going forward. So, and you don't know how much it's going to go up. Number two, and this becomes very important, you're not in control of your own environment. If you're in an apartment, you can't do whatever you want to that apartment. And number two, you've probably got neighbors a lot closer and more involved in your life than you ever want.
Like it or not.
Like it or not. So the other part is, when I say you're not in control, you can't do what you want. Repairs happen on your landlord's schedule, not when you want them to happen. They may get to it right away. They may not. It may take them days or whatever to get whatever the problem is fixed. And also, if the ownership changes, if you have a landlord or group management and it changes, it can change the whole environment of where you're living.
Aha. And that happens probably more often than you would expect.
Yeah, you hear those stories that a new management company came in, or you had a landlord you hated and now you got one you like. So it can work in both directions. But again, you're not in control of over that situation.
Good point.
And then finally, there's no part of your monthly payment that's going towards ownership or equity. It's all going to the lifestyle that you chose.
Makes sense.
So now let's look at buying. What are the advantages to buying? Well, let's start with that first one, that you have more control over your lifestyle and your comfort. You can make the changes on the home that you want, and it's your place to do with as you want, for the most part. Number two, with it comes ownership. And that changes your pride factor, how you feel about the home, how you care for the home. And every payment, some of your money goes towards increasing your equity in home ownership. It does provide a stability of payment. You know what your house payment's going to be every month, unless your taxes go up, but that's a yearly situation, not monthly. So you also have the tax benefit of a mortgage, deducting the interest. But keep in mind, that's a double-edged sword. While it's a tax benefit to you, it's also a cost of living there. You've borrowed money from somebody and you're paying them interest. And a portion of that's tax deductible. But like I said, in my mind, it's a double-edged sword.
Sure. Well, those are good points.
The other thing is, you hopefully will get appreciation. We had a period where that didn't happen, where home values didn't go up, they went the other way. But traditionally, over the history of home ownership, 3 to 5% appreciation should be what's the norm. So that's a nice advantage as well. And then finally, in my thought process, I got a bigger bang for the buck by buying over renting. In other words, when I looked at the houses that I wanted, that I could be comfortable renting, the amount of what my rental payment would be was far greater than what I could buy that same house for on a mortgage, because rates are so low right now.
Those are good ups. What are the downsides?
Now, there are downsides. You have more upfront costs. You know, you probably have a down payment unless you have a VA eligibility, when you could get by with no money down. Potentially you have closing costs, but most people particularly should really look at doing a no closing cost loan, which you and I have talked about in the past. So that's not necessarily a mandatory piece. You have maintenance costs that you don't have with a rental. And some of those maintenance costs, a replacement of a roof, hot water heater, can get pretty expensive.
For sure.
You have less flexibility of movement that we started out. Maybe the biggest advantage of renting. If you own a home, it's harder to sell it. It's more costly to sell it. So it's not as easy to just turn around and pick up and change your residence.
True.
So, like I said, I just went through it, and I started out looking to rent because I wanted the flexibility, didn't know where I wanted to end up. But the more I looked, I decided I wanted the privacy of a home ownership and what it allowed me to do. For instance, real important to me was cooking on a patio, because I love to grill. Well, you don't get many houses, you don't get many apartments and condos that let you cook on a patio.
Sure.
So, and then number two, I found out that the houses that I would be comfortable renting were going to cost me significantly more than I could do for a mortgage. So I think it really helped me to understand the process of what's important while you're renting. And obviously some people, as you go towards an individual situation, it gets, you know, more complex. There are more variables. Children get involved, school districts. So there are a lot of different things that pertain to different people.
Excellent points. Well thought out. This is a good list for people to reference, for sure.
Let me throw in one piece on the financial piece, though. You know, most 1 or 2 bedroom homes right now, or rentals, apartments and condos, are going to cost you at least $800 to $1,000. You could get a $200,000 mortgage today, and even with taxes and insurance, that's going to end up right at $1,000, $1,100. So in terms of reference rent versus own costs, that kind of puts you in a ballpark.
It's a good benchmark there, and pretty affordable.
Yeah, the where rates are today, it makes the decision making easier and more complicated at the same time.
Absolutely.
So you have to determine what you want.
And throw in that pet factor. You know, a lot of places, even rental or apartments, aren't real pet friendly.
You're exactly right. That gets into the lifestyle and comfort. If you want a big dog, not likely you're going to have an apartment or condo.
No. Well, excellent. Well, as always, very enlightening. Thanks for shedding some insight on the pros and cons of buying versus renting a home.
Well, I'm not here, like I said, to convince you, but if you've made the determination you want to buy, let me help you find the right mortgage and see if that makes sense.
And what's the best way to get in touch with you, Mike?
Matt, you can call me at the office here, which is 480-503-3533, or call me direct on my cell phone at 480-220-2329, or email me at mike.goblet at our company initials umfginc.com.
Excellent. Well, always a pleasure, Mike. Thanks for another good session.
Thanks, Matt. I look forward to getting back with you in the near future.
Sounds good.
You have a good day.
You too, Mike.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.